We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And we are back. We took a little break from X-Men 97 to cover Spider-Man, A Brand New Day, also called it No Way Home, almost called it No Way Home, but we're back with X-Men 97 Season 2, this time covering Episode 8. So as always, we'll give you a final verbal spoiler warning. If you've not watched the episode yet, this is your last warning to do so before checking out our episode. Otherwise, we're going to spoil it, and that is no fun. But with all that out of the way, Katie, why don't you get us started?
I had a lot of mixed feelings about this episode, if I'm being honest. I have kind of been waiting for this episode for like 2 years, and maybe it's part of that got me a little too far down the road of like expectations. But I think I should just start by saying I'm feeling like the season's getting rushed in this episode.
Can I kind of piggyback off that and add a little nuance and say I think that they didn't really have a plan? Like, it just feels a little bit like scattered. Like that's how it's coming across, and maybe they did have a plan.
I feel that way.
And look, maybe they went in with a plan, but it doesn't seem to be executed, I think, the way, like, season 1 was so flawlessly executed from point A to point B, right? Season 2, even if they had that plan, I just feel like there's so much going on, and they introduced so many elements, and then they like moved certain elements away that were kind of what we expected. And it's not just about expectations, it's just like the flow of everything. Like I and we've talked about kind of the breakaway episodes that they've done this season, maybe proportionately more so than there were last season. Maybe that's, part of it, but I just feel like, I don't know, like we got to this point and I'm kind of like, how did we get here?
Okay, that's kind of how I felt. And I think, it felt painfully obvious during this episode that it did feel like directionally we were challenged. Because while I will say, we talked about like 3 of the main theories last week of like ways things could play out. One of them was true in the fact that Apocalypse was using Gambit as a host. Mm-hmm. Which you could kind of, before that was revealed, understand, because the way he was able to put the rest of Gambit's, family and stuff under the spell. Like, I was like, that's not something I feel like even a horseman should be able to have been doing. But that being said, while that theory is correct, it felt really just like strange. And then it felt weird that they like, obviously Apocalypse is still in Gambit. He's kind of just buried within him right now. I mean, the last few or the last bit of the episode is them saying like he's not going to stay within his consciousness forever, like he's going to come back out. But I guess it just felt so strange because it almost felt like they tried to wrap it up in this episode, and then like, but it's not over. But then I'm sitting here trying to figure out how we have one episode left, And now I don't, I think we've talked about this. I didn't anticipate this season necessarily end and have like a full ending like we did last season with Bastion. Like I did kind of anticipate that, especially with Apocalypse involved. We were going to be doing pretty much 2 seasons of Apocalypse, especially because this season I feel like we really actually didn't get him nearly as much as you would have thought.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is that like for someone who was supposed to be the big bad, he appeared in like the first couple of episodes, went away for a long period of time, was name dropped last episode, and then showed up. And I think that might be why, and then showed up in Gambit's body, which I think might be why it feels so, again, like I'm going to use the word like, and scattered. Like it just doesn't feel like the beginning of the season, which I thought we had such a clear direction on. And again, like this isn't about our expectations. It's just this is where you led the audience, I feel, to think of this going a certain way. And if you think about, this whole idea of like the past apocalypse and the future apocalypse, like we talked about last week, the apocalypse from Egypt versus the one that in the timeline or time period with Nathan.
Yeah.
This seems to be, I would have to guess, the apocalypse from the future, right? Because that apocalypse was so focused on getting a new host. That's why he wanted Nathan. And so if you think about his last appearance, which I believe was at the end of episode 2, we have not seen this guy for 6 episodes.
Oh, see, that's interesting. You thought it was that guy because I thought it was the En Sabanor version.
Well, because
he makes a comment to Professor X about how he didn't learn from Magneto.
That's true, but if you think about the future version, would have had all the past version's memories, wouldn't he? Like, wouldn't it update his, like, this is where it gets confusing, right?
I really kind of try not to pretend to know.
Because I guess I assumed it was the future version because we learned that he was doing work to make Horsemen in episode 2, the X-Force episode, right?
Yeah.
And so if you think about that, episode 3 had not yet, again, I don't know how they're happening in parallel and that's all confusing, but like episode 3 had not yet happened. So in theory, En Sabanor was still En Sabanor and not Apocalypse when the Horsemen were being made, right? So that's why I just assumed it was the future version.
See, that's funny because I fully assumed it was the past, like the En Sabanor.
Because also, like, if En Sabanor had just up-leveled to Apocalypse, I'm not sure why he would have necessarily needed the, like, to a new host.
Yeah.
Plus, he had that whole background with Chandra, and, like, if he had just come from ancient Egypt.
Can I complain about that?
Well, okay, let's take that was definitely brushed over in terms of like the explanation, but
they were like, here's some random love interest that like actually played him, and I was like, I mean, go girl. And then I thought she was going to be important, and it's not that she wasn't, but then he also killed her in 5 seconds, and I was like, oh.
Well, okay, let's take a step back. She was in the room with Ramatut in the ancient Egypt episode, so she was low-key introduced there, very subtly. And then she also is in the original trilogy in relation to the Thieves Guild. Or the, not original trilogy, original series. So you kind of have to go all the way back. Like, she is an existing character. I will agree, the random love story reads to me, they sat in the room and said, we need a reason to tie Apocalypse to Louisiana and the Thieves Guild and bring him back to Gambit's home. We also need some sort of mechanism for whatever he's going to do to Rogue. And I tried to figure out what this stone was. I can't find a comic equivalent. I was looking online to see if people were talking about it. I didn't see anything. So I don't know what he did to her, to be honest. Maybe he made her immortal. Unclear. So yeah, I don't know. That all felt very rushed. Like, oh, we just need like a plot device here. Let's toss in a betrayal and a romance. And I was like, okay, like it's really early in the morning, but I'm not getting this.
I know. I was watching this at like 9 o'clock right? And I'm like sitting here and it's on, and as I normally watch it where it's like on the side, right? And I'm still paying my attention to it, but I'm like looking at it and I'm like, maybe I'm not, maybe I just missed something in this moment. So I backtrack and I'm like, okay, now I'm staring at it and I'm staring at it and I'm watching it. And I'm like, you know, that didn't really make sense. Like, and to your point, I understand she already exists as a character and stuff like that. That's not my issue. That's never been my issue with this since I've sat on it for 10 hours. But it has been that I just was like, what was the point? And maybe we'll see at least the ramifications with the rogue part of it and the stone, in the next episode or in the future. Fine. But then, and okay, this is also another selfish reason, but like, obviously, comic book lovers, you all know this already. Gambit and Rogue are married in the comics. They are one
Right.
of the very few couples that actually, get married and are still together and no one dies. Well, they have died at one point, but they, currently alive. And, you know, I guess selfishly, I also was like, please don't be this, like, don't let this be how you do this. If you're gonna play this out and let us actually have Gambit and Rogue finally get married and be together, because we've been playing this game since the 90s and we've had to deal with the only good couple being Jean and Scott this whole time. Like, I was
Good
like,
couple is a
I'm sorry,
is a way to describe them.
the only actually like married couple. That's true. They're not really good.
They're not
at
even
any time.
married though. Do we know that they're married, or did
We're
he
not
marry
going back.
Madeline?
We are not going back to that.
I'm just saying.
No, you're
I'm
not
just
wrong.
saying.
You're
you
not
know
wrong.
I live for the Summers family saga. I'm just
Yes, but technically she has her memories, so I guess they like are. I don't know, whatever. Either way, I was like, if you're finally going to give us this plot point, which I hope you are eventually, like this is where this goes, I really would like to think you didn't think to do it when Apocalypse is using Gambit's body and manipulating Rogue through Gambit to do all of this. Like, I was like, I really don't want that to be the moment. Like, I just think that's like not it.
I just remember thinking, and now I watched this at like 6:30 this morning, so I had literally like opened my eyes, rolled over, and turned on the television, and I was like, we're gonna do this right now. So sleep brain. But I remember thinking, oh wow, the wedding is now, and like that's kind of crazy. And like there was a part of me that was kind of excited because I was like, wow, we've never actually seen it. Like no medium has actually done the Gambit and Rogue wedding. So I was like, I'm kind of excited. Like I'm kind of pumped about this. But then at the same time, when it was revealed that Apocalypse was basically controlling Remy, I was like, this is not him. Like this is not
Right.
his memory. Like, is he gonna remember any of this? Unclear. And then the whole time when it came to Gambit and Rogue, I think what I was most struck by, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, was they really kind of subverted my expectations in terms of what that reunion would look like. Like, I assumed it was going to be Rogue was going to have to, really fight him, and that was going to be something that was difficult for her. But I don't think I anticipate, and I know I didn't anticipate Apocalypse using Remy's face to manipulate her into joining him. I was like, the whole time that was happening, I was like, okay, like I'm pleasantly surprised here because I wasn't expecting this.
Yeah, I mean, one thing to quick say, I'm actually pretty sure we can't say no medium has done it, because I'm pretty sure Marvel Rivals did one of the seasons was entirely around Gambit and Rogue's wedding. So I do just want to clarify that
good point.
Technically has, I'm pretty sure, been done in another medium that is in the comics. But beyond that, I struggled with that because I was like, the manipulation is fine. Where I actually really struggled was I was like, and now you know what, guys? Personally, I've never had a boyfriend or person that I wasn't dating and I technically had just rejected, but I still loved, die, and then come back to life and actually be possessed by a ghost of another bad villain.
You can't relate to that experience?
Yeah, personally, never been there. Maybe it's a bucket list item. Not sure. But
pretty niche.
I will say, I was really thrown off because of how easily she just like gave into it. Now, again, like I could understand manipulation, but I really was like, wow, Rogue, you didn't really fight at all. Like you just were like, yeah. Yes. Like, I don't know.
But then if you think about let's think about her whole arc in terms of season 1 and season 2, right? She
Yeah.
gave in to Magnus because she so desperately wants touch, right? She never felt that part of affection or love. So she very easily kind of gave up on any qualms she had there in order to get that aspect of love and affection. But then when she has that conversation with Remy about it being more than skin deep, she then, changes her goal really, and then has to live with the regret of him dying and her never making that right, or being able to truly cross that line with him into a
Yeah.
full relationship. So if you look at it in the context of everything that she's been through over the last few months, her melting like butter is kind of expected.
No, I mean, I cannot relate to that circumstance, so I can't really sit there and be like, this is how I would have reacted. I will just say they all knew Gambit was some version of a bad guy. They thought he was just a horseman, right? They didn't know he was literally Apocalypse's like puppet. So
Right.
I was kind of like, girl, you had to have tried a little bit more. Like you're aware that he's not Gambit right now. So I was really thrown off by how willingly she just was like, yeah, like I'm gonna come and then I'm gonna get married and we're doing this. And like, yeah, she had those moments that you could see on her face. She had like some reservations, but she really just like, she's wet. Like she fully committed.
I will say though, the moment he shoves the stone on her, I guess it was on her, that part I was like, oh, that's going to be interesting, because that's also, I think, before we found out that he was Apocalypse.
Yes, because
So
we find
you
out he's
see him,
Apocalypse in the mind battle.
yeah, so you like see him do that and force that on her, and immediately I was like, oh, that's bad. Like, because she had been to your point, she had been going maybe a little too willingly, and then when she kind of showed that hesitation that last time, he was just like, your will does not matter to me, and I'm just going to do whatever I want. And so
Right.
that's where I was like, ooh, this is going to go poorly. And then you find out that it is Apocalypse, and like
And you're
Remy's
like,
not really,
oh,
yeah, steering the ship, and you're like, that tracks, because I don't even think at his worst Remy would ever take away her ability to like choose and make decisions for
no.
herself. That's why he worked. I mean,
No.
it was Apocalypse, but that's why he worked so hard to manipulate her and make her want it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we know he wouldn't, because even, and obviously this isn't at his worst, but even in episode 5 of season 1, obviously before Genosha, he sits there, or I'm sorry, they're on Genosha before the genocide on Genosha. He sits there, and even though she chooses Magneto, she's still like, he still sits there and is like, we'll still be friends. Like, this is your life. I still care about you. Like, whatever. He still supported her through that decision, even though that decision wasn't him. And again, obviously that wasn't at his worst. That's Gambit at his best. Like, that's who he is. But I do fully believe that's why, like, there was the part of me that was like really thrown off, because I was like, he's being so nice to her. But then I was like, that's not right either, because that shouldn't be working like that if he was a horseman. He shouldn't have that level of a soft spot for her. And when she couldn't suck it out of him, like when she couldn't touch his skin and pull it out like she did with when Angel was Archangel, I was like, no, something's not right. Like this, something's just off here.
Well, and my first thought was, especially when you're right, he did have that soft spot and he kind of, showed that he wasn't going to be a danger to her. All I could think was, well, he just won the battle, because now he's got her heart and he's able to finally, be able to touch her physically, which is something she craves so much. So
Yeah.
that's just another reason why, like, it made sense that she caved, because now she could have
True.
everything with the man that she wanted, and there are no restrictions because she can't hurt him.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That's a totally fair point. I mean, it was very interesting. And then like, let's get into like, okay, I guess they're X Corp now. X Corp and X Force showing up, because we also had X Factor at the end. Let's get into that, because I know that was supposed to be a big like huzzah moment, but unfortunately, because we didn't know it was Apocalypse at the time, that fell flat for me. Because I felt really weird that they were all going after him, like, to attack Gambit like that. And I understood he was a horseman, but I was like, I don't know. It just made me sad, because I was like, he's a member of your team. And, like, that just didn't sit the same for me.
You mean when they went to the bayou to go get him?
Yeah, and they have that big, like, Avengers moment where they like show everybody as they like land and like whatever get ready to fight. And I know it's supposed to be like a big like we have like mended teams and like we're in this together and like whatever. I guess I was just a little like from the X Corp side or slash former X-Men. I was like, but that's your teammate. And you could tell that they were like, I don't know. It just this whole episode, I think I just struggled with the pacing of it so badly that nothing made sense to me. That I was like, why is this the big team up moment right now? Like, this just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I that part didn't bother me only because the X-Men X Corp team was so adamant that this was a rescue mission. Like they pulled Cable aside and they were like, "None of your shenanigans." I mean, he shenaniganed, but we'll get to that in a second. But they made it very clear what type of mission this was going to be, so it didn't bother me because to them it was, let's go get our guy. We'll figure out how to return him to the man that we know and love, and we'll figure that out. And yes, they did the whole team up, but they kind of knew they were going to have to fight him in order to, it's like when you have to fight to get your dog in a crate, right? It's like they're fighting, but it's like what you need to do to put them
my
away.
Gambit is a failed crate trained puppy.
Oh, we all know, trust me. But even when he was little and we had to fight and we were still trying, you had to fight to get him in there. He wasn't exactly thrilled about it. But it's like the same kind of thing. Like you're fighting, or for example, great example, my cat hates getting her nails trimmed. Getting that girl even sedated, we have to sedate her, in a carrier is a full-time like experience. I usually sweat like it's crazy. Anyway, you have to do it because trimming her nails is good for her, but she doesn't like the actual experience of getting into the carrier. Sometimes you have to swallow your medicine in order to feel better. And I think that's what, to me, that's how I interpreted that kind of lineup scene was, we're gonna fight you. We're not gonna fight you to the death. We're just gonna get you to a place where we can do what we need to do to be able to help you. And I also think like some of that then was like intensified by the fact that Rogue did go with him. So now you have a member of their team who is of her right mind with him that he's manipulated. He's also turned Nightcrawler. So you have two members of the team really. So I think that's why, like I said, that didn't
everybody.
Whoa, and I know people were talking about this online. I remember thinking, is Nightcrawler actually secretly the most lethal one out here?
I mean, first off, also like kudos to the animation team for the way that they showed that montage of essentially showing it from almost his point of view of like just taking them all out. And you know what it is though? Like what he lacks in like actual power, like like in comparison to, for example, to like a Storm, what he lacks in that actual power, his ability to literally go anywhere his mind thinks of and be able to pretty much sneak up on anyone that even the telepaths can't track him, makes him an incredible asset, but makes him a horrible opponent.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because he doesn't have, to your point, that like offensive mutation. It's literally traveling, but because he has those, like the swordmanship that he has and some of the agility, which is part of his mutation, but that all combined then makes it like you think you're gonna fight him and next thing you know he's stabbing you through the back and you're done.
Right.
Like, he's a lot more lethal, and it also makes me wonder like how much have we seen him actually pulling his punches in fights previously, because I mean I think the only other time Well, I think the only other time that we really truly saw him go for it, and even then he was not trying to kill them because they were still human beings, was with the Prime Sentinels last season, because he and Logan were getting overwhelmed. And so you could see that he was, really, he was using his powers to the max, but he was still not fighting to kill, which was interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I liked that there was like this tiny little moment, especially coming off of last episode where we got, more of his character, in the spotlight. Then there was this tiny little moment to be like, actually, let's just look at him as a fighter and give that moment or that aspect of him some time to shine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was awesome. But to kind of go to what you were saying, I understood why they were together. Like I said, I almost wonder if when I say it, the bigger problem was the general pacing, because I just felt really weird that and because we didn't know he was Apocalypse in this moment, and to my knowledge, nobody really, because it wasn't until like during the battle, I think that Cable put together fully that that like Apocalypse is using Gambit as a host. I think I just was really thrown off because I was like, why are we treating him like the big bad when there's no knowledge that he's the big bad right now?
Well, I think on Cable's part, and I know you said he didn't fully put it together until later, and I think that's right. But I think you have to think, and I'm glad we're talking about this because I did bring this up last episode. That man is so singularly focused on his purpose as related to the prophecy.
Yeah.
So even though he may not have been able to prove that Gambit was inhabited by Apocalypse, I think he had an inkling because in his mind it was never possible that someone else killed Apocalypse because that is his purpose in life.
Yeah.
So yeah, they found the body, but to Cable, he even says it at one point. He's like, there's no way that this is my destiny or something like that. And I think he says it to his parents before the battle because you see him struggling with this idea that, again, this thing that has been drilled at him since probably his first words was taken away. And so it's just denial that ended up actually being right. And then he just goes
True.
against his parents. And that was rough to watch because you could see the disappointment in his parents' faces. And Cable just does not care. He just is like, this is what I was put on this earth to do. You made me. Let's go.
Well, and to be fair, he doesn't really. He has this relationship with his parents, but not really. He wasn't raised
Yeah.
by his parents, you know.
Right.
And I'm still stuck on like Madeline's his mom, not Jean. So
we'll just not talk about it.
I know, but I guess like from the basis of that, like no offense to Jean, but she's essentially the stepmom. Like it's just like you're not actually the one who birthed him.
One of the wikis has Jean as his genetic mother because she's technically like, it's like her, then Madeline, then Nathan. I think that's the best way to put it.
Which is fair, but like that's still not his, like again, she didn't birth him. And I mean, I think we see that moment even last season when he keeps trying to save Madeline and he can't. And so it's like, I think and you know, it sucks because Cable's the only one I don't feel like in its own way we've actually gotten to really explore. Like we've explored bits and pieces of his childhood, but we don't actually get to explore him and like his intentions. And so like that bit from Genosha is completely like, and obviously so many other things happen, completely kind of like, you know, just avoided almost because we don't get the ability to talk about it. But like, I do wonder how much of his thought process was if I could save Madeline, what changes? How can I change my future? How can this change, you know, my past? Now that like all this has happened, will she keep looking for me? You know, will Scott, my dad, choose her, not Jean? Like, kind of all these dynamics that we haven't really had the full ability. Like, the Summers family has the scariest dynamics.
It's a saga.
And it is a saga, but like that's not something we really got to hit on was how much he had been trying to save his own mother.
Right. Because to your point, like if you were to play out like a what if scenario, Jean was all angry at Scott because they were having that he was having that emotional affair with Madeline and, you know, they were checking in psychically, which is his and Jean's thing. So he was still, you know, contacting her. He was still communicating with her and building a relationship with her, understanding her as Madeline and not as Jean. And so like you never know how that could have played out, you know. And I don't know if in the comics he ever has a relationship with Madeline. I couldn't tell you, but for the purposes of this show, that's just something that's completely unexplored because as Beast points out later in season 1, like Genosha is an absolute point. It's always going to happen. We saw it with the Watcher, you know, right before it all happened. Like, you know, that's an important inflection point. So Cable's never going to be able to do that, or to save Madeline. But it is interesting to kind of do the mind exercises of like, how could that have changed everything?
Well, right. And then I think that's such a big point as to why he is acting the way he does and like the relationship he does and doesn't have with Scott and Jean. I think there's like, because it's such a weird relationship and like, it's hard because it's like he doesn't really want it, but he kind of tries, and like they just want nothing more than to have like a good relationship with him. And I think there's just so many dynamics that I think it's being played out. Like we see this playing out literally on the battlefield as they have two different mentalities. He has his thought process of what he's always been raised to know and think because what else did he have? He didn't have his parents to raise him in the other way. I mean, they even have that conversation when they say, so you remembered meeting us back then. Why didn't you say anything? Why, whatever. He doesn't really care. Like, he literally does not care.
But I think he does, but I think he's so much has happened to him trauma-wise.
But that's what I mean.
He doesn't want to get attached. And that's the problem.
I think he goes about with this idea of he does not care. And that makes it easier for him to move forward in his life in all capacity. And what was it? He gets attached when he's 10? Then they left again. Yeah. So it's like, he unfortunately has parents, but has the worst abandonment issues alive.
Yeah. Well, and it's also interesting too, because from a purely field tactical perspective, you had 2 commanders out there, because Cable is used to leading his own team, who very clearly, unbeknownst to some of them, had a side mission, which was to kill Gambit. And then you had Scott, who's also used to doing that. And I think it's also got to be, very difficult for Scott and Jean, because, they Jean, take this with a grain of salt, knew Nathan as an infant. They knew Nathan as, a young man. And then they know Cable. And I think for them, it's they see this little kid when it's Cable, but it's not. It's not the Nathan that they left in the future. This is a grown man who has been through a lot of stuff since they last saw him, and has very, entrenched beliefs, and has his own, way of doing things, everything you were saying. So I think it also has to be hard for them because they didn't get to see the gradual transition of Nathan from a young adult or a young man into a, fully grown man, an adult, that it just happened literally in the span of months to them. And so I think that's got to be part of the complication as well.
No, for sure. And I actually think this dynamic is going to be part of the reason, in its own way, he teams up with X Factor.
Who teams up with X Factor?
Cable.
Oh. Do you mean at the end credit scene? Well, not end credit, but the final scene of the episode?
Yeah, because I think part of it is the same goal, which is taking out Gambit, obviously, who's Apocalypse. And obviously now X-Corp/X-Men are harboring him because it's Gambit to them. And they're going to do everything that's in their power to try and, get Apocalypse out, keep Gambit alive, all of that. But not only do they have the same goal, he has a level of betrayal he feels towards his parents, because he had his own plan going into that. He essentially was going to betray them going into that. But it's them doing it back to him, and essentially, in his mind, choosing their teammate who they were trying to save over their son and the destiny that he's supposed to have, which is to kill Apocalypse.
Good point. You're right. I want to talk about that final scene, because I think that's kind of going to be I think, in my opinion, that's the last really big piece of this episode, right? You had the Gambit and Rogue stuff. You had the Summers family saga coming back around strong. And then finally, it's kind of the idea of all of these different X teams coming home to roost in one way or another, right?
Yeah.
And so, is that Gambit?
So sorry. My Gambit is losing his mind, if you guys can hear that. There is, I fear, another dog walking outside.
How dare that dog go near your house?
We're on the second floor, and anything's possible. Out of the corner of my eye, he's now barking at me. So
he's just letting you know the dog's there. Enemy's been spotted.
No, he's literally like,
Mom, be prepared.
Mom,
Eyes on a swivel.
Still there. Still there. Yeah. So I apologies for that small little bit. Just had to let him get that out. I think he's good now. Oh. Okay.
Yes, he's so big and scary, Gam. Any of you who have seen our Instagram know he's 25 pounds. So
literally, you could, if you're watching me on YouTube, he's right behind.
I think that might get cut off, sadly, but I'm getting the full picture, and I can attest it's actually really entertaining. What a funny little dude. But anyway, back to what I was saying. We've had all of these teams. It was only a matter of time that they kind of come into conflict, right?
Yeah,
The way
for
that,
sure.
and this, we even saw this with Jubilee earlier in the season. The way the X Force, it's the home trilogy all over again.
It sucks.
The way the X Force operates is not the same way that the X-Men/X Corp operate. Is very different from how X Factor operate, and they all had the same goal, right?
Yeah.
But they were going about it differently. Now, to your point, Gable. Wow, we are really struggling in the back half today. Cable is a little bit miffed at his parents. He's a little frustrated with them. So it makes sense that X Factor, who now Dr. Cooper, she has been nursing a grudge since the beginning of the season, which I don't really understand because last I checked, she helped Bastion. So, like, where is this lady's credibility?
Well, and she had, like, you know what part of it is? I don't think she's ever really liked Professor X, but she had a soft spot for Magneto. And unfortunately, Magneto didn't make it back from the little, like, time adventure they went on, but Professor X did.
But
so
at the beginning of season 1, she liked Professor X and she was all against Magneto.
I don't.
So she flipped, when Magneto was in custody, Bishop's custody, not Bishop, Bastion's custody. Hey, at least I'm catching myself in real time and not later when I'm editing and going, darn it, that's the wrong name. But when he was in Bastion's custody, to your point, she felt that empathy towards him. And I think ultimately she's the one who sets him free. But she still was working with Bastion, which to me means her morals are extremely questionable. Now,
I agree.
Then you extrapolate that and you say, okay, well, X Factor has been moving in extremely morally questionable ways all season. So that's not exactly surprising to see that that's how they're behaving. However, I guess my larger question, I'm surprised I didn't say it earlier in the season, is who gave this woman the credibility to run X Factor when she has the past that she has?
Well, right. I mean, she as a character is kind of interesting because I don't think she has loyalty anywhere, but and that's fine in itself. But then I question, I'm like, but then what is your intention? Because the thing is I don't care. And by saying I don't care, I mean, like, it's one thing for a character to not have loyalty. However, most of the time they have a plan and they have an intention. They have whatever side they need to be on, and they're gonna not be loyal, but they're gonna use people as they need to get their mission accomplished. The thing about her that I don't understand is I don't understand her mission at any time.
Right. Like, is she a supporter of mutants or is she a detractor? Like, because she has moved both ways in different parts of this show.
Which is why I get confused by her, because I don't really understand what her intention, what is the end goal? I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't follow well.
Right. Well, and then you add on to it the fact that, like, now she has this kind of like super crazy grudge against Professor X. And it's like, okay, I'm sorry that, well, that I think can be explained by the fact that, X Factor was, without the X-Men, really the only, we'll say, credible, and I'm using extreme air quotes if you are not watching this on a video, mutant team, because X-Force was not, any others were not, whatever. So with the X-Men/X Corp coming back and those very familiar faces who ostensibly the public is supposed to trust coming back, she's now lost a lot of her credibility because that belongs to the X-Men through the years that they have, helped people without asking for anything but acceptance in return. So it's hard for her to kind of compete with that. So I get kind of why she has, I guess now that I'm saying it out loud, I understand now why she has this grudge specifically against Professor X. But I do think, like, that driving her to work with Cable, I don't know why I keep trying to call him Gable today. Cable is really going to be very interesting. And I think it's almost setting up like a secondary conflict for the final episode, which is making it feel maybe a little crowded.
Well, okay, so I want to address that last bit, but I also just want to say this is probably not the most important part, but, like, we have not really been addressing that Scott's brother is chilling on X Factor. And that in and of itself feels like confusing because we're not addressing that.
I feel like, you know how we always say, like, Scott is very, like, my beliefs are my beliefs and your beliefs are wrong if they're not my beliefs. Like, that is just how he, like, moves through the world.
Yeah.
I have to think that, like, his brother being on X Factor means that he does not have a brother. He's just like, you're wrong. You mean nothing to me. And I do think it's untapped, like, emotional.
But that's what I'm saying. We have all
storytelling.
this Summers family drama all the time, and I'm like, we're just having havoc out there. I mean, literally like
Yeah.
havoc, not like havoc, but like the man havoc. We have him
Not
out
like
there.
the concept.
I mean, conceptually, yes, also. But like we have him out there, and like now it's coming to a head. And we also already had Polaris leave that same group to go to the X-Men because I don't know, kind of X Corp, I guess, whatever. And where was she? I don't know. But anyway,
Yeah.
it's fine. I really can't keep track of all these people anymore. But you know, we already have all this happening. Now, not only do you have his brother, so you have Scott out here at X Corp. Scott's unofficial wife, also part of it. Plus, at least Scott's child,
yeah, it's
also
Scott's.
a part of this. So, like, I'm sitting here like, we're just not tapping into this. There's a whole other dynamic to this that we're not addressing. Cable is now with his uncle.
Yeah.
Unaddressed.
Well, like, the fact that there's a triangle of, like, main teams this season, and, like, there's at least one Summers on each one is extremely... the fact, again, to what everything you're saying, the fact that we're not tapping into that is so frustrating, because I get that they don't have time for it, but, like, they definitely could have.
But why don't
not
they?
done some? Because they did all the side questy episodes.
But that's
what I was getting
point.
at.
Like, I'm like, why don't you? Also, we don't
Right.
need to do 9 episodes. We don't need to do 10 episodes. We could do 16. You used to have all these episodes. You literally, the ability to do it is actually an endless possibility.
Well, I will say the one reason it might not be happening right now is I don't remember if they ever addressed it in the original series, and it just feels redundant to them. I know we've seen Alex before, so I'm just not sure if, you know, it's been a while since I've
really
watched.
addressed it before either, though. I don't really remember.
I honestly couldn't tell you one way or the other. I'm just trying to, like, cover our bases in case we're just not remembering, because it's been like a couple years.
It's more, this explicit moment feels weird that we're not addressing it.
They're very much, like, directly in conflict right now.
Well, but also, from my memory, if it's serving me right, this is the first time Cable's going to be directly working with, and I think is it Alec or Alex? I've been avoiding his name because I can't remember. Alex.
Yeah, with an X, not with a C.
But, like, Cable's going to be literally working with his uncle.
Yeah.
That I don't believe that's ever happened before. So, like, that's where I'm kind of like, that's a dynamic right there. But also, something else you said at the very end there, we do have a lot of these teams. It is all starting to come to a head. However, we have 1 episode left. And now, I don't care that Apocalypse isn't taken care of. I don't need him to be. Give me season 3, all of Apocalypse. That's fine. I ride for that.
But, like, real Apocalypse, not in Gambit's body.
No,
because I feel a little bit like we did not. And look, this might just be a check your expectations moment, but when wow, I'm just gonna take a deep breath. My little Finch app says I need to take 3 deep breaths, so I might just choose this moment to do it.
Okay,
no, but we were promised Apocalypse last season when he picked up that card. And I think what we've gotten this season has been taste, and nobody's really said anything because it's been like, well, it's building, right? But now he is not in his own body. And yes, he's very scary, and he can change people into horsemen with the flick of a card. And he has, I mean, Gambit with the scythe is, like, moving, you know, and it's pretty awesome. But it's not Apocalypse. And, like, there's just something about his imposing, large, gigantic body that makes it feel really scary. And so we did not get that. They did not deliver on that promise.
No, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. I don't really want him in Gambit's body for the next season.
Right.
What I will say, though, is, like, I don't mind him returning regardless, right? I don't mind it being a 2-part season that's focused on Apocalypse. That's fine. We still have to address having different teams out there. with all different intentions, all kind of trying to do different things. And I'm just concerned on how we're doing that in a 30-minute final episode when I just feel
Right.
like I don't even understand what the culminating point is. Like, I truly do not understand where we're at. I don't know the
Yeah.
goal. At this point, what I can summarize is X Corp wants to keep Gambit alive. So they're going to harbor him to try and keep him safe, even though Apocalypse is within him. They're going to do everything they can to keep him alive and get Apocalypse out and defeat him.
Right. Right.
Okay. X Factor and X Force, that whatever's left of X Force, is now going to sit here and try to work together and just try to. Well, here's the thing, that's actually where those goals don't entirely align either, because it's not just about killing Gambit at this point. There is a vendetta against X Corp, and
Correct.
that is coming in from X Factor. So it's beyond just, Gambit and Apocalypse and things like that. X Factor is going to be trying to take down X Corp.
But the thing is, and you pointed this out, doesn't Cable maybe kind of feel like he wants to do that right now? Because he's a little frustrated with what X Corp pulled, which was, doing exactly what they stated and protecting Gambit and treating it like a rescue mission and not allowing him to just murder him in cold blood. And he has that line when he's with the final two members with Angel and, oh my gosh, why am I blanking? Psylocke. And he's like, oh yeah, like it's just three of us now, like because obviously Jubilee and Sunspot went back to where they rightfully belong. And he kind of has this like tone, like, oh, like they kind of took them from us, like it's just the three of us now. And you can tell like he's very frustrated by the situation. I mean, his gun got destroyed. That man, I mean, in my head, he sleeps with that gun. So I'm sure he's very frustrated by the loss of that weapon as well. So I don't necessarily know that their goals are that diverged when it comes to X Corp / the X-Men.
No, I mean, that's fair. It's possible they're not. However, the one thing that has to kind of also come into play is when we first meet Cable, it's because him and Bishop are very similar. They're from the future, and so when something goes wrong in our time, they come back to try and fix it because they're like, now my future's messed up.
Yeah.
Thank you for
this
that.
This isn't right.
This isn't right, and now I'm annoyed. That's kind of his MO, right? So at the end of the day, yes, the mission to kill Apocalypse is there. That's his destiny, but he's still from the future. And so he can't entirely, like, if it's meant to play out this way, fine. But there's the degree that he can't change everything too drastically because then his future could still be completely messed up.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to play that because he like also made that point earlier in the season to talk about how he's chased Apocalypse like through time. And he's like, oh, every time you think he's somewhere else. But like, what are the ramifications of him killing Apocalypse in a different time? Like, what does that mean?
Right.
I do.
And we have I still think we have two Apocalypses on the board.
Well, that brings me to my theory for how I think the season is going to end as it relates to Apocalypse. I think that we are going to get Ensaba Nor version of Apocalypse because in my head this was future Apocalypse coming, and I think he's actually going to when they
wait remove... I'm sorry, you're gonna have to clarify that. What do you mean Ensaba Nor is the future version?
No, because I think what I'm saying is I think the version in the present is the future. That in my head Ensaba Nor version of Apocalypse we've not yet seen. The version that was
not clear.
Sorry, the version, thank you. The version that is in Gambit's body and inhabiting Gambit's body right now, to me, I think is the future version. And so what I think we'll see is and this could go both ways, regardless of which version is where, but just for argument's sake, we'll say the Ensaba Nor version comes to the 90s. And then when they remove Apocalypse from Gambit's body, he's going to actually absorb all of that. And he's then going to be an extra scary, extra powered up version of Apocalypse because he has I don't even know if this is possible, but we're just going to go with it. He has the power of two Apocalypses basically living inside his body. And that's what's going to be setting up the big bad for next season is this version of Apocalypse that's more powerful and more, and we've talked about this, more personally vendetted against them than they've ever seen before, and that's going to be season 3.
I mean, I can't say anything because anything is possible, And I don't really know where the next episode / the finale is going.
Yeah. I feel
So I
like
appreciate the theory because I honestly don't know
thanks.
where they're gonna exactly take it. I really don't want to have an entire mind battle. That's not exciting to me.
Yeah.
So I do hope that kind of it comes out somewhere. But yeah, I really hope next episode does a little bit more with tying up strings because right now I don't know the point of traveling through the different times.
Yeah.
That
I
doesn't feel
think
like that's paid off yet.
I agree. I think by this time, and look, you can probably go back to our penultimate episode reactions of season 1 and be like, you guys didn't think this at all. Like, I'm going to call you on your bluff right now. But to my memory in this moment, I feel like moving from episode 9 to episode 10, because there was one additional episode in season 1, we were able to we were not able to predict it, but I think directionally we had a better idea of what was going to happen
I think
versus
it
like
felt
this
like we were in a
season.
they
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
this season they like ramped everything up in the penultimate episode to the point where it's like, no, you have so many plates spinning that like you, regardless of whether or not you make Apocalypse the villain next season, you have to do something that makes it worth a season finale. You
Yeah.
can't just be like, oh, exactly how it is how things are going to end and you're just going to have to wait until next year. Like, that's not how it works. You have to ratchet up the stakes and make it bigger in order for the cliffhanger to actually hit. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, I'm unclear on how that's going to happen even for Apocalypse, and yet also how they're going to wrap up some of these storylines around the conflicting mutant groups as well.
Right. Well, and the thing is too that I like we still have the bigger picture of like the world.
Yeah.
We're so granular right now because we're stuck in these different groups and Apocalypse and stuff like that. We're not really addressing these big I mean, Dr. Cooper's been out there talking to the world, right? She's been broadcasting
Right.
to the world. X Factor is being used as the leading mutant group to the world. Like, there's all of this perspective too. I mean, X Factor was pretty much abducting children at one point and like putting them in containment centers. And so, like, we have all of this happening
Yeah.
that's like not able to be addressed. And maybe again, this kind of comes from that perspective of okay, last season, the Prime Sentinels unfortunately became so global essentially
Yeah.
because they were pretty much tricking people. Like they were, I don't remember how we had decided what that was, but they pretty much were like feeding people the virus that made them the Prime Sentinels. Like obviously all these people didn't sign up to be the Prime
Right.
Sentinels. So that was such a grand scale that sometimes maybe I'm struggling to kind of pull it back and be like, this isn't, but like it is. And like I again, to your point, from the mutant politics point of view, okay, X-Force is one thing. They kind of go on a different level, but like the X-Men / X-Corp and X Factor have been operating in broad daylight.
Yeah.
People have different perspectives of both groups, whether they like the X-Men and Xavier School, which is still operating. Storm is just headmaster over there. Like, it just feels like we're not paying attention to some of the larger story because we're so stuck into here's the 17 groups, here's the Apocalypse storyline with the 17 apocalypses, and now we have Gibbet. Like, that's where I'm at.
No, and that's so valid because I think the other thing to think about is we had an entire it's Creed, right? I know I got this wrong last week. We had an entire Creed episode that was last week, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all, some of these episodes are starting to run together a little bit, but we had that entire storyline with him, but let's not forget how it started. He's running for president. And one of the things that has always been a part, and we've talked about this a lot, of the mutants and the X-Men storytelling is the politics and the, public perception, and all of that is so ingrained in these stories. And yes, you're getting some of that with, to your point, the X Factor versus X Corp X-Men thing, and X Factor's slander campaign against X Force, and even the news bulletin that we got when I think it's Storm and those who are at the school who are watching, and they're like, oh, we don't know why an X Force plane like crash landed in Louisiana, and so they're running a whole campaign against them in the public eye as well. But one of the things that we're missing beyond the public perception is the actual politics behind it. Because if you get someone like Creel in office, that brings, the
Creed.
Sentinels. And I'm talking, darn it. I was like, you're going to remember this in real time. Creed, thank you. You're when you get something like someone like him in office, and I don't know if he's going to continue to run or not, but I don't think that was a there has to be a reason why we got back into the politics for that episode is what I'm trying to say. Someone like that gets in office, that reignites the idea of the Sentinels, not Prime Sentinels, but like the original large robot, I'm going to come get you Sentinels. So, and, containment collars and anti-mutant sentiment being something that is even more popular than it already is. So I feel like that might be, even just from the footage that came out at SCCC from season 3, I wonder if we're going to kind of get back to more of that like acceptance or lack thereof storytelling too in season 3 and focus a little bit less to what you're saying on the different teams. And like, yes, I think Apocalypse might potentially be an issue, but we're really focused on that right now. And there's a whole big country, there's a whole big world out there that is not really being addressed.
Well, I just think the teams in and of itself make it kind of strange that I don't feel like it's being addressed the same way.
Right.
And we're going into the finale. So I know, like, I don't have a lot of spare time, but there is a part of me that almost wants to rewatch season 2 from start to finish. I mean, it's not really a lot of episodes if you think about it. Just to kind of feel like maybe if cohesively watching them together, I feel differently. Why did Wolverine show back up? Where was he? Don't know. Like, I just...
Yeah.
I'm just struggling a little bit with some of this. So maybe it takes watching it all together to maybe feel a little bit more cohesion in the season. But yeah, this
Can
was
I
a weird
also
episode.
give a hot take? I want them to spend more time in the X Mansion. Like, I feel like we haven't spent a lot of time there this season. And, like, of course they go on missions and stuff. But even just, like, having that as the base of operations.
But it's not
so
anymore.
Classic. Right. But, like, it's so classic. It's so, like, what you think of. Like, I don't know. Like, this season, I think I almost feel, like, displaced partially because of that, too. Because we're not in some of the, like, very normal locales that they're in, and they're very much, to your point, spanning the globe with X Corp and everything like that, and they can't necessarily operate as X-Men from the school. Like, I understand that, but there's a part of me that hopes that they can maybe get back there, even if it's by the end of season 3. I just want them sitting in the room around the big round table and talking about what they want to do and like all those things. Like, I just kind of miss some of those moments. I also feel like because of that, we're maybe not getting some of the helpful explainers that we've gotten in past seasons to just be like, hey, we're just going to lay this out for you a little bit and like talk about what this means for the world or the ramifications of things like that. Like, those conversations, I'm sure they're happening, but they're not happening for us to see.
Yeah. No, I do feel like we're very separated. And
Yeah.
I feel like we've missed conversations that need to happen to explain certain things.
Yeah.
Like, I understand Storm was made headmistress of the school. I get it. But now you've sidelined her. And that was kind of in this episode when she was like, oh, we need to help because, like, the school isn't the most important thing right now. But you sidelined her from the start. Or even when the whole thing with the danger room, like, I'm not even gonna get into that. That was a whole other episode. But, like, it just feels like they're like, this character would solve this problem too easily, so we need to take them off the board.
Yeah. I agree.
That's almost how it is.
Like, even having Polaris in Louisiana would have been a totally different fight.
Where was she?
Right. Where was Bishop? Right? Like, I just don't understand. And then I did think it was funny, and this was the last thing that I'll say, but you were talking about Storm, obviously she's headmistress, so she's kind of located at the school right now. But her excuse was, Peter can take care of the kids. And I was like, oh, so I see why you brought Peter in last episode. Like, literally for that throwaway line to be able to let Storm, join them on this mission. I was like, okay, that's fine.
That's what I mean. I don't know. The whole thing feels disjointed is like the word of this episode. I just feel like it's disjointed right now. And I'm really hoping the finale, I honestly, again, I don't need it to end. I just need it to kind of take some of these pieces off the board in some capacity so that I feel like I'm like, okay, by the time season 3 comes, I don't feel like an insane person.
Or even just like make it all make sense together. I feel like the storylines individually, I'm like, yeah, I'm tracking. But then it's like, I don't understand. Like they just haven't fit together yet. So even
Yeah.
if that's all they do, to your point, and we leave some loose threads, fine, whatever. Like we know we're getting a third season. All right. But I want you to then show me like where these things connect. So it feels like one cohesive season and not like, hey, here's like 6 storylines that we like couldn't decide between. So we threw them all in the same season and it's not really like going together. And we're just going to keep subbing characters in and out based on like specific plot needs, which I guess they probably did in the early episodes, like the
Yeah, but it
original
didn't feel
series.
so
But
intentional.
yeah,
Or like maybe noticeable is the right word. Like I just feel like it
yeah.
like really just feels insanely noticeable that certain characters are being held into certain areas to not have them part of a battle that they would have made way easier.
Well, it's almost like too, like the pattern has been like, here's your like spotlight episode, disappear. Like, you know, like they did that with Wolverine. He like
He
went
was
away
gone for
for
like
2
2 or 3
episodes.
episodes. I was like, where
Yeah.
is this man?
Polaris was in her spotlight episode, then she was in the next episode, gone. Where's Polaris? Unclear. Even like Jubilee, right? Like she got her big moment in episode 2, gone for half the season. And then it's like, okay, so I like when you spotlight characters, but not if that means based on your rules that we're gonna have to spend half a season without them or a few episodes
Yeah.
without them. That's not fun or fair. Like
And I like
don't
the
like that.
multiple characters. I like that. But the thing is, I feel like the OG show always did that. So it's like,
Yeah.
I think unfortunately trying to focus so much on all these characters is creating just an inability to focus at all. And
Right.
so I do in parting, I will say I'm hoping the finale shuts me up about this episode. I'm hoping
Yeah.
it just gets me where I need it to be, because right now I just feel in its own way disheveled. Like I feel disheveled. Like I just feel like
Yeah.
I don't know the direction fully, and I'm just a little confused. And this episode, I actually almost watched twice, but I unfortunately didn't have the time to, because I just was like, maybe I missed something and I just like didn't follow this right. I think I like the concept that he's in Gambit's body. I think that's interesting. That was one of the theories we did touch on last week. But I just think there's so much more going on that we're not really addressing. And then we have all this other stuff that we have to address. It's just, yeah, I'm hoping the finale just shuts me up about it, honestly.
Well, I hate to say it, but the canon event has canon evented, and the eternal question of I don't know how they're going to do this in one episode has arisen. So it truly is a canon event.
Yeah. It has happened.
And it's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, more power to them if they can change our mind next week. We are rooting for them to do so.
Yeah.
But that is everything related to episode 8 of X-Men 97. Katie will tell us what we're expecting next week, though I think you can all take a guess what we're going to be covering next week. Make sure that you're following on your podcast platform of choice so that you are aware when we have new episodes. You can also check out our website and our Buy Me a Coffee, both of which are linked in the show notes below.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials, which are linked in the show notes down below as well. And we are finishing up X-Men 97 Season 2 next week with the final episode, episode 9. So make sure you guys are coming back and listening to us after you watch that episode next Wednesday. And as always, Marvel just blew your mind, so let's talk about it.